Benvenuti nell'era del post digitale, dove like, tweet, share sono comuni azioni della nostra vita quotidiana. Ci svegliamo, ci loghiamo e iniziamo la giornata. È vero, la tecnologia ci ha semplificato la vita, ma forse l'ha resa un po' meno intima, anche se non deve essere per forza così. Noi di Randstad, infatti, crediamo nelle connessioni reali, quelle che vanno oltre i dati e gli algoritmi, quelle che si basano su empatia, intuizione, istinto. Per questo all'innovazione tecnologica uniamo sempre la passione dei nostri professionisti, per creare una connessione che sia umana, come quella che c'è tra due persone che parlano davanti a un caffè. Per andare al di là di un curriculum o di un annuncio di lavoro, per comprendere il cuore e l'anima di un'azienda, per spingere i nostri candidati e i nostri clienti ad andare sempre oltre. Human Forward. È questo il progresso che ci porterà a realizzare tutto il nostro potenziale. Perché non è un lavoro a definire chi siamo, ma è ciò che siamo a definire il lavoro che facciamo. Randstad. Human Forward.
Buongiorno a tutti, buongiorno.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning and welcome to Rimini Meeting. My name is Monique De Brambilla, Director of QN Quotidiano Nazionale, Resto del Carlino, La Nazione nel Giorno, and I will be facilitating this meeting, whose topic is the labor market and the change occurred that affected the whole world after coronavirus. There were processes which were already underway, smart working, which have been accelerating significantly. As everything unexpected, coronavirus can also be an opportunity for change, and it can teach us to improve. Clearly, there are some doubts, there is collateral damage, and there is processes which need to be managed. I will immediately introduce today's speakers. Two of them are present here with us in person, and three are present remotely. The two of them who are present here are Carlo Blangiardo, President of ISTAT, who will give us an outline of the situation and how Italy has changed after the lockdown, and Marco Ceresa, CEO of Randstad Italy. We have connected with us Alessandro Profumo, CEO of Leonardo, Marco Travaglia, President and CEO of Nestlè Italia, and Marco Hanappel, President and CEO of Philip Morris Italia. Now, the President of ISTAT, Blangiardo, will give us a presentation, and then the other speakers will answer a couple of questions. Everything will last about 1 hour. I will immediately give the floor to President Blangiardo to give us an outline of what has happened and what will happen in future. Thank you. Good morning to you all. Thank you for inviting me here. As a president of ISTAT, I will try to give you an outline of what has happened and I will use statistical data, of course. Now, this is the outline of my presentation. I will talk about what happened before and what happens after. So what happened before, what was happening, what was changing. All of a sudden, COVID came through. What COVID has changed, everything new that it brought about, how much we've been able to capitalize on these new aspects. Now, I'll use a couple of terms which were important enough. Flexibility before and distance today. Now, flexibility. It talks about the idea of a flexible labor market, which might as well have been precarious with a whole set of negative consequences. But that was one of the, let's say, landmarks that existed earlier. All of a sudden, then, the distance came about, the distancing. And I will give you my own personal experience in ISTAT. In January this year, ISTAT started with smart working before COVID, and the goal was to help employees, to help workers, to give them flexibility, especially women and all those having family problems, giving them the opportunity to do smart working. It was an experiment. So we got organized, we got prepared from a technological point of view, and then we started smart working. All of a sudden, what was an experiment became a need. Now, the 2,000 ISTAT employees had to stay home. Very few of them came to the office, and they all did smart working and working remotely. We managed to work as we had planned, and we added new information. We launched different surveys, additional surveys compared to what were originally conceived. So, we were giving flexibility, and people did start working out of a necessity, and results were extremely interesting. Now, this experience was quite important for us. Now, the labor market beforehand was this one that you can see in the slide. Now, I won't give you too much data, but I will just go through some slides. Now, the curves you see here are the trends of the number of working people and workers. So, employment compared to 20 years ago has increased in quantitative terms in Italy and in Europe as a whole. And the less qualified workers have been decreasing. That were the major trends in the past. Here you see a comparison between Italy and the south of Italy. So we highlight here the difference between the north and the south of Italy in terms of employment and a specific type of employment. And you see that over the time before COVID, people continue to be very qualified or quite well qualified, let's say, while working. So there was a sort of change in the labor market. People were more qualified. Then in 2008, there was a crisis which really affected the whole situation. And here you can see the changes occurred in some sectors during the crisis. Some employment was created. For example, caregivers. Caregivers significantly increased in number, and whereas in some other sectors employment decreased due to the crisis. So before COVID, some sectors had some crisis which changed somehow the labor market. And somehow we found the solution, and then COVID came through. And this is the labor market after COVID. Now, as you can see, There was a radical fall of employment for a couple of months, and then a slow recovery. Here you see the people who were most affected, especially those who had no permanent contract. There were no new hirings, no people were newly recruited. And so, as you can see in this slide, the situation particularly affects a market segment which was already weak before COVID. So there was a decrease in the number of workers overall, but what mostly concerns is that most people are not actively looking for a job because they think there wouldn't be any opportunities. So as a paradox, let's say unemployment rate decreases, but just because the number of workers, the labor force is decreasing. They are not looking for a job just because it's not worth it. And this is very important to consider. This is also the trend of worked hours, which has radically fallen with some recovery, which you see on the right-hand side. So this is the macro data, quantitative macro data. This is what the situation before COVID and what how COVID affected the labor market, and the fact that the labor market is now trying to recover. So now that we have absorbed, let's say, the shock, we are trying to react, and some positive signs can be seen. It is important to continue working on these positive signs and to work on some structural changes in processes. In qualitative terms, let's say that before COVID, as you can see in the slide, there's different situations compared to the position in a labor market, those having a permanent contract and those having a non-permanent contract. And before COVID, there were situations where people would be at risk. So especially the youth already had problems. This is flexibility and smart working. There were already some experiences of smart working at very high level. It was a sort of niche market, although smart working was not very common, was not a daily routine. Oftentimes, people would say that they had very strict working conditions and therefore they were forced to follow rules and procedures. These data have been collected by surveys in 2019, so before COVID. So this is smart working. You also see the size of the flexibility, as in people would be quite flexible, but just very few of them. In recent months, we shifted from what you can see in the left, where there were very few people working from home, to the right-hand side, where there is an increasing number of people doing smart working. And that was totally new. So there are workers who are forced to work remotely. Now, the real challenge is to create the conditions for not reducing productivity under these circumstances. Are we all ready to work so that this situation can be an added value for growth? Now, here you can see two components. Here you have employers and employees. So the question is, to what extent are they both ready to do that? Now, as for employers, during the lockdown, we made a survey in families to see the behavior, to understand the behavior of Italian families, and among a very wide sample of companies and employers to understand their reactions, projects, and strategies. And we studied this information, and we we understood some interesting data in order to understand whether we are ready for that. Clearly, there is a problem of space, as in companies must be able to have space, must be able to organize things smoothly. They must have technology. It was the same for students. Students could follow classes from home on condition that they would have a PC, for example, and internet. So the companies, that also applies to companies. Companies must also have space and technology and must be enabled to do that. Clearly, there's sectors where the employee must have a relation with the company and with customers. So there are some situations where smart working is possible and others where it is not possible. So we need to understand the phenomenon. We need to understand that there are some differences between sectors, and we need to imagine ways to optimize the different opportunities and exploit them. As for employees, workers, this change requires technological skills. Now, technological skills do exist, but compared to other countries, Italy is not in the best conditions. Some days ago, I was asked to make a survey on the access to the internet by Italians in order to understand how, to what extent computer literacy works, because we are aware that we can do things, but there's a long way to go, and a lot of improvements are needed, also from a technological perspective. To conclude, I believe that smart working, remote working, is indeed an opportunity which was not very much considered in the past, but that should be enhanced in the future. Clearly, it has positive elements, but it also implies some problems. People who can do it, do smart working, they can be productive, they are more free. That's because they don't have time constraints, and sometimes they tend to do things and to work at some times of the day where maybe they wouldn't have worked, like on Sunday, for example, or at night. sometimes there's even situations that are not very favorable for employees. I'm a demographer myself, and I've been working a lot on the opportunity, on the possibility for mothers to work, and on the striking a right balance between working life and personal life. So smart working can be important in this context, but for example, a mother who is at home with 3 children and works from home, well, maybe smart working would not be the best solution, because for a mother of 3 children, going to work would be the real opportunity to do something else, to go out from home. Work is also an opportunity to socialize, to have interactions with other people. So clearly, smart working doesn't give this opportunity. So we drew an important lesson. We have to take note of this. We have to understand that there's the other side of the coin to be considered. We need to be sufficiently good at finding a balanced solution in order to exploiting this opportunity while leaving other options open, and do it in a different way and according to the different sectors. There's still a long way to go. We have not found the solution, but there is a way to go, which has already started. As for statistics, I believe that what ISTAT can do in making data available to decision makers and to citizens is important, because these people can have the necessary information and can really be aware of what happens. And I think that this is our work, this is our mission. We have worked along this direction. We have done that during the lockdown, and we will continue to do so in the future. Thank you. Thank you very much. Now we'll start with a round of questions to our speakers. I would kindly ask you to stick to the time given, 3 minutes maximum for your answer. Let's start with Alessandro Profumo, CEO of Leonardo. Good morning, Mr. Profumo. Where are you? I'm connected from Ischia. Well, lucky you. Now, this shows that many things that we didn't do in the past, now we have been forced to do it, and that's good. I mean, Leonardo, a major company like Leonardo, has had to accelerate the digital process. Now, the question is, were you ready for that? What have you done? And you don't speak about smart working, but you talk about home working. And I was struck by that, because one of the features of remote working, let's say, is that you can work from home, but from everywhere. Thank you. I'm sorry not to be with you, but I'm away with my family, and this is the only time where I can be with them during the year. Now, I'll make some remarks before giving you the answer. The first remark on Blangiardo's report and presentation. In Leonardo, nobody lost his job. We have protected the jobs of our employees, and we only have now employees with a permanent contract. As soon as as I entered Leonardo, we no longer had people working on a non-permanent contract. So right now, we have managed to manage the situation without dismissing anyone. Second remark. I was somewhat worried in this report, the fact that we continue to underline the difference, the gender difference. If smart working can even worsen the gap between man's employment, male employment and female employment, then companies must be the first entities to do something to bridge the gap between gender differences. If a mother has 3 children, there must also be a father taking care of the children. So the father must also be involved in the family and in family life. So why am I talking about homework and not smart working? That's because before becoming smart, you need to change working processes. And we have realized that at some point, almost 45% of our employees were working from home. They can also clearly work from everywhere. Understanding whether work can be smart, even if it's remote work, is complicated. That can be simple, for example, for clerical works, administrative works. We have 10,000 engineers, more or less, and I can tell you that the development process of engineering was not suitable for smart working because we have no task assignment, as in we coordinate engineers based on human contact. So we cross-check the work made by others by talking to people, with direct contact with people, by organizing meetings. So we need to get ready for that. We have seen what happens around the world, and we have to review our processes so that home working can really become smart working. We made a lot of surveys for our colleagues. We had a first experiment with the collapse of the Genoa bridge. Having a lot of people working near the bridge, at that point, at that time, we needed to change our way of working in Genoa. So we have understood that it will be key not to have people not always working from home. We need to have a personal touch. We need to have a direct contact with people. This is key to continue developing creative ideas, nurturing exchange, and developing human relations, which are important for us. So we will get ready to work remotely on a temporary basis, as in we could have people working 2 days from home and 3 days in the office, or vice versa. And that requires a radical change of our organization in the offices. It will be, we will need 30% less in terms of space. Just imagine the real estate implications of that throughout the country. So that will lead to a radical change. Clearly, we will need to provide all working stations to our people so that they continue to work remotely. Many of them ask us to work with a mobile connection. It's not that they need to stay at home to work. We will need to have the fiber net, but also mobile net, that is going to be very powerful. So many things will be required, and companies will have to deal with that. To conclude, and maybe we will speak about that later on, this will increasingly imply cyber risks, that's for sure. Thank you, Mr. Profumo. The last point that you mentioned is very important. Now, let's continue to the analogical world. We have Marco Ceresa, CEO of Randstad Italy, who had introduced the smart working in 2016, if I'm not wrong. The question to you is the following. What has changed compared to what you did in the past? What has changed after COVID, and how will you continue this experience?
Well, we started with smart working in 2016 because, well, on the one hand, we wanted to reduce our sort of ecological impact and reduce pollution. On the other hand, we wanted to offer better life conditions to our employees so that they could work from home. But actually, it was quite free. People could decide freely what to do. But then things have changed because at one point, there was no option any longer, but it has become a must-do thing. We were technologically ready, so we didn't have any problems from that point of view. Instead, productivity increased because for us, productivity is easy to measure because it's about how many people we have allocated with respect to our, let's say, fixed structure. And we saw that there was an increase in productivity. And so we realized that home working, smart working, you name it, will continue in the future. That's the fact. Now it's up to us to understand where to invest and where to disinvest. Maybe you have to reduce the level of investment in facilities, but also, you should also consider other kinds of investments because, if people start working from home on a regular basis, we need to help people managing better their sort of family life at home. Because yes, let's consider also the possibility of homeschooling, because if a child has to be followed with homeschooling, how is it possible for a parent also to do smart working at the same time? Oh yes, you're totally right. So we need also to support our home working employees, but certainly smart working is there to remain. Personally, I'm leading a personal so-called in-house fight because I don't like the idea to have fixed rules and say 3 days home and 2 days in the office or the other way around. Well, to me, that would be too strict and rigorous, and that would be not so good for anybody. It's better to understand which are the processes that can be done perfectly well from home, and those processes instead that require the physical presence around the table of a number of people, and so that can be more effectively carried out in presence and not online. But certainly we need to entrust our people with the maximum level of trust. We need to provide them with new tools different from those used in the past. But all in all, it is a great opportunity to increase productivity. Productivity increase is necessary in Italy because the GDP is given by the number of working people timed their productivity. And we know that the number of active people will certainly go down in the future. So we need to boost our productivity in order to sustain continuously our GDP. Thank you, Marco Ceresa. Now, I would like to say hello to Marco Travaglia, the Managing Director of Nestlè Italy. So, Mr. Travaglia, where are you connected from? Well, from my office, actually. I'm in my office. So, you are not smart working. Well, totally, we are now 8 people out of 1,200 normally, and you have your headquarters in Assago, in the sort of outskirts of Milan, with more than 1,000 employees. So how much have these people worked from Assago, and how many with smart working solutions? How did you manage this emergency situation? Well, We are present all over the country for more than 100 years, so we are pretty delocalized. We have 10 factories, our headquarters in Assago, and we had to manage 5,000 people during the crisis. Of course, our first and top priority was safety and health for everybody. But certainly the smart working decision was made first of all for our headquarters when it comes to the factories, and I really must congratulate on all the people in the factories that made sure that the supplying and provisioning of food and drinks for everybody were there. So I really want to thank them all for their work. But certainly, we somehow were facilitated because 99% of the people having office tasks could work home within 1 week very easily. Instead, factories had to keep operations on. Well, we have started smart working from 2012. But at that time there was a sort of average number of days from 2.5 up to 5 per month being worked on a remote basis. But now almost 99% of the time is worked on smart working mode. So again, in the past we used to have roughly from 100 to 150 people per day working on a smart working mode, but during the lockdown period, we reduced really the presence of people to the bare minimum. Of course, smart working brings about some major changes when it comes to our facilities. Recently, we have made some survey, and so far 1,000 people have responded, and we see that certainly both executives and managers down to white-collar workers, they certainly expect to keep on smart working with the different sort of frequency. And so people think that we'll move to 10 to 12 days being smart worked from home. And well, nobody has a final solution yet. Ceresa said interesting things, and certainly it's important to underscore trust as a key topic, because if you really want to successfully move and shift to smart working, you need to fully trust your employees. Certainly, our employees have really appreciated this sense of greater trust and higher level of independence, because certainly when you smart work, you need to be entrusted with greater level of trust. Well, things need to be compensated somehow, because as Ceresa said, it's not possible to have rigid and rigorous rules and say 3 days in the office, 2 days home, not at all. It is important to reorganize the operations of a company according to processes and understand which are the things that can be made at best with the physical presence and things that can be perfectly managed online. It's important from a strategic point of view, from a point of view of creativity, of relational sort of frameworks, and also when it comes to accompany young recruits in their first period, it's important maybe to have more physical presence. Well, a balanced approach will certainly prove to be the best once again. We have started this working mode over the last 6 months, and I don't know, some people say that things lasting more than 3 months become a sort of habit. I don't know what's the final take, but certainly using smart working as an opportunity is extremely important, paying attention to the possible negative effects that somehow could be detrimental to the social corporate fabric. That is also very important, because then maybe it's hard to pass on values and culture and the social aspect is always very, very important for a group as big as ours, but generally speaking for people in general. Yeah, human relations, you're right, is always very, very important. So looking into each other's eyes and having some direct contact. And now we have the managing director of Philip Morris Italy. Good morning, Mr. Anne. So I'm asking you, where are you connecting from? Good morning. I'm connecting from the north of Sardinia. So my family is right on the beach right now, and I'm here in a room just connected with you. Okay, so let's tell us more about the lessons you learned after this emergency situation. And I think that everybody took this for granted, but somehow it's also important to say that thanks to smart working, it was possible to contain the further spreading of the virus. So what's your take on the situation right now and the future of smart work? What do you think also when it comes to the future of your company? Well, first of all, I think that many companies have been caught by surprise by the whole situation, because this new mode was required so quickly that not everybody was ready. Many companies were really caught by surprise and had somehow quite heavy impact. And others reacted differently. I think that in our case, smart working facilitated multitasking, multifunctional approaches. Some people had the opportunity to work with people they had never worked constantly before, so somehow that proved to be beneficial for some respects. We could also develop a clear strategy, and I think this is beneficial. So trying to have a vision, trying to be focused and to reach that vision is very, very important. So fixing clear objectives is also very important. So it's important to have a goal-related management approach in order to guarantee the best productivity and efficiency. And over the last few months, we have also gone through different levels of integration, because during the COVID emergency period, so during the lockdown specifically, we recruited more than 100 people. We have also converted a great number of fixed-term contracts into unlimited sort of contracts. So as far as if we are concerned, we didn't stop our development and expansion. But certainly it is extremely important also for young people, for the youth starting their professional path in their career. It's important to give them opportunities. As President Blangiardo said, some physical places still remain crucial for men, for people, for individuals, and also for the businesses. So factories, offices, schools are essential places that need to be integrated with digital connections and equipped with smart working facilities, so that people can be free to integrate into these spaces, but also trying to keep them available all the time. During the lockdown, we never lost touch with our supply chain in Italy when it comes to the industrial side and the farming side. We are constantly connected with more than 1,000 farmers, so we have exported the digital platforms to keep in touch with them. At industrial level, we stopped just for a few days just to fix some specific management issues, and Well, smart working has been started straight away in offices. On top of that, smart working helped us better think digitally and have a higher level of digital connection with the retail world and with the final consumers. So, in my opinion, this is key, and many companies had already started somehow this sort of transformation process. So digital and technological integration had already been started by many companies. Of course, we need powerful technological infrastructure supporting all that. Thank you very much, Mr. Hanapol, and I go back to Mr. Profumo for a second question. Leonardo offering aerospatial solutions. Well, to what extent can Leonardo, with its products and services, have an impact on the life of people? Because companies are not just economic players, but also social players. And what do you think about the new start that we all have to make? Well, first of all, we talked about digital solutions, and Leonardo is a large company that is investing a lot in digital solutions. And we have started a number of Leonardo labs. The first one is going to be put up in Genoa, and it's going to be a supercalculator that is going to be key to us to use all the big data connected technologies, artificial intelligence, augmented reality, simulations, and so on and so forth. And then we're going to create another 7 labs: Turin, Milan, Florence, Rome, Pomigliano, around Naples, and Grottaglie. And we are going to focus those labs on digital solutions, and the ones in Naples and Apulia on new materials, because for aerospace this is key. Calculation capacity is very important because, for instance, we use a lot of big data analysis systems concerning, for instance, observation of Earth through satellites. Earth observation is a technology that was developed for military purposes. Now it is largely used for civil purposes. For instance, among the others, the targeted farming, high precision farming. In some areas, we could reduce by almost 90% water consumption by double-checking the level of humidity and maturation of fields thanks to satellite solutions, better managing irrigation systems. Or another interesting solution and application has to do with high-precision farming again, and in particular the targeted use of chemical products and fertilizers. So you can reduce their use as well. And also there are other aspects to be considered, like the management of landslides, risk, and so it is possible to better monitor key and crucial infrastructure. For instance, you can really monitor everything moving on the Earth, and we can monitor that and then convert that information into decision-making processes, because if an object is moving and you see it from above, and comparing the situation with our big data, we can decide what to do. So information is really key to make decisions then about the situations detected on Earth. Another quite pragmatic example has to do with augmented reality. And augmented reality is very important, especially when it comes to remote maintenance of machinery, because these technologies can be used for that scope, for that purpose, and that may contribute to the reduction of general costs. So the possible applications are really very many, and for instance there is the cybersecurity, last but not least. I quickly mentioned that already in my previous intervention. Well, we are talking about people connecting from a remote basis, and all of these connections could be potentially used as, attacking tools from prospect criminals. Say, having systems that are safe by design from a structural point of view is key. And also we need to train people in order to avoid risky behaviors leading to a possible risk increase. For instance, using personal computer for smart working, meaning by that the household computer, generally speaking, is something that is absolutely somehow not recommended at all, because it's certainly a major risk. So the number of cyber attacks largely increased over the last few months, and even large companies have been severely attacked recently. So it is important to avoid such attacks, because certainly that represents a major risk to all of us. Hello again, Mrs. Ceresa. You are a specialist when it comes to people motivation. You are very good when it comes to training people and developing a sense of belonging and of team belonging in people. What about smart working? And then I will ask you the most banal and self-evident question ever. Isn't that maybe by working on a smart mode, you take an additional nap, or maybe you work a bit less? How can you monitor productivity, and also how can you keep that level of motivation so high? It depends a lot on leaders and the different leaders a company has. Well, first of all, when it comes to control, we do not control the number of worked hours, or if a person maybe had a nap or whatever. What we check are the results. So it's important to emphasize the result and not the effort taken to reach that result. And then we have a Randstad corporate structure that is based on capable leaders that are at the service of their collaborators and workers. And again, trust, mutual trust is extremely important. Trust goes hand in hand with responsibility. So it's really fundamental to have responsible workers and employees. And on that respect, I'm really, really happy about what's happening at Randstad. However, to me, smart working represents a great opportunity, because I've been asking myself recently, how do new entrepreneurs, get trained? I come from the province of Lecco, and I remember that many people used to go home and start fiddling with things in the garage. Oh yes, even Bezos, legend says, started like that, and then they built up companies, sometimes very successful ones. So maybe smart working may allow people once again to start a new business and create maybe their own business. So this is something interesting. I would really like to stimulate at Randstad and spread among our employees this sort of message. Italy needs new entrepreneurs likely to conquer not only the national market but the international market. So let's try to be positive and see all these new things as an opportunity. Thank you very much, Mr. Ceresa. I go back to Mr. Travaglia now. So, Mr. Travaglia, in your opinion, which is going to be the greatest challenge you will have to face, especially if smart working is going to become the new standard? Certainly, to me, the main challenge is the future of the next generation, the generation starting to work right now. We're going through deep changes, and We're also going through difficult times because it goes without saying that economic results are suffering from the general situation. As I said before, new recruits need to be sustained and supported and accompanied. It's important to try to imagine already the future of our companies, and so onboarding should be foreseen on a remote basis. And how can we make sure that new recruits can immediately recognize the corporate culture, the DNA of that company, and how can they keep their learning activity alive? I've been working here for 31 years. I've started as an intern, and I remember watching carefully my bosses and heads, trying to steal secrets and tips from them. So certainly that contributed to my career here at Nestlè. And while going back to new generations, trying to somehow envisage the future in a way that is beneficial to them is very, very important. And I was really happy to hear what Mario Draghi said yesterday, because I agree with what he said, and I really want to emphasize that. Nestlé has been committing over the last 10 years for a special under 30 rolling out program at global level. In Italy, within 7-8 years, we have rolled out several programs and initiatives based on training programs and internship periods. So it's also important to teach young people how to cope with their somehow entrance into the employment market. And we have recruited directly more than 1,600 under 30 people. We have rolled out so many training initiatives. We have trained more than 30,000 people. So to me, this is the biggest challenge ever for the future, because again, new generations at one point will have to take charge of so many problems, so they need to be equipped with the best possible tools. And I share what Mr. Ceresa said about forging and shaping new generations of entrepreneurs. We have been strictly working with the world of startups, and there is much going on in Italy on that respect. So when it comes to startup creation, from startup to Skylab down to the exit phase, things are changing, but though we are still undersized compared with France, China, and the US, because in those countries, certainly the level of scale is different. But again, we should understand also from a legal point of view or a tax point of view how to further encourage the connections between young entrepreneurs and established companies. Because then, well, sometimes the startups have such a high failure rate from 90 to 95%. And well, fair enough, this is also logical somehow. But we should sort of consolidate these sector in a more organic way, so that the startups could find somehow viable outlets in already existing established companies. That could be interesting. That could be a good way to guarantee the further development of new generations of entrepreneurs in the future. So the major challenges are many, and to me, the top one is guaranteeing education, training, lifelong learning to our employees, and also, and most of all, to the young generation starting working right now, that certainly will still suffer from this situation today in the future. So we need to prevent any form of discrimination or long-term somehow jeopardizing. And a very last question with Mr. Anhappel. So, Mr. Anhappel, please tell us some good news, because we always read on papers that investors, and especially investors from abroad, do not seem to be very much interested into Italy. You have invested 1 billion euros in a brand new center close to Bologna. How is it that? Why have you invested 1 billion in Italy? And have you found special skills and abilities in that area? And so, what have you found that could be useful for you?
Yeah, I'll try to be as optimistic as possible. As many people know, we have undergone a major change. It was a company producing cigarettes, and now we are a company producing innovation products, different from the core product we used to sell. In order to do that, we had to make an investment. And we have decided to invest 1 billion euro in Italy. We bought this, we made this company in Crespellano near Bologna, and we decided to do it in Italy because Italy has very important factors for mechatronics and packaging, which is a very strong sector in the region of Emilia-Romagna, and also because in Italy there's the perfect integration between Philip Morris and the agricultural supply chain. There's 650 suppliers working for the creation of this factory that was created in 2016. Out of them, 600 were Italian. This investment is going to be the hardware that in future will enable us to work and invest on what is needed today to develop further investments in Italy. We will probably invest on the digital sector. We will have investments of 10 million euro in Italy in a short while. But we are not just going to invest on trade, but also on industry. And we will continue to do so because what is important today is to combine the hardware and software, as in people. The smart factory is not made of equipment, but is made of equipment and people. And artificial intelligence must go hand in hand with investments on human intelligence. So the investments made for machine-to-machine have also to be made for person-to-person and machine-person. Therefore, it is key to collaborate with different institutions, universities, and other local companies so as to develop industrial skills. This is key, and this can attract further investments in Italy and to bring to take innovative factories like the one we have in Crespellano from 1.0 to 5.0, and that can only be done with equipment and machines, but also with people. This is why we want to have some millions investments on people in a short while. Thank you. And now we will have a couple of questions from the audience, and we'll see who will give an answer. Now, this is the first question. How can we ensure that the presence of people at work? Partly we have answered to that with Marco Ceresa through results. So we can check results and we can see whether employees have produced results. How can smart working ensure and provide services to citizens? And that leads us to another question, because the collateral damage is many services to citizens will change suppliers. Let's think about all restaurants and bars living off the people that will go there for lunch. Let's think about transport, for example, and people using the transport system to go to work. Now, let's have a short answer from the 5 of you, including President Blangiardo. So, 2 questions from the audience. How can we ensure that employees produce results through smart working? And what about the services and the change in services through smart working? As for the first question, I think that the most natural thing is to check employees' results. And we've done that in ISTAT. We have checked the production, the quantity of production. So if the people who have to do something do them and deliver them, well, clearly there have been some results. As for the second question, as in the use of some services by citizens, well, here there is 2 positions, as in, on the one hand, citizens must know how to access a certain type of service and must also have the technological skills to use them. Some things already exist. You can provide answer from everywhere, and you can provide information and services from everywhere. As I said before, if we have a better knowledge of tools and ability to use them, that will be a step forward to give a positive answer to that question. And that has increased quite a lot, because many elderly people have learned to use the digital we have seen through surveys that grandparents are now meeting their grandchildren on Amazon or on Zoom, or do shopping online. Yeah, we have made a survey on that, and surprisingly enough, the elderly became more familiar with the digital world, and that came as unexpected. Profumo. Well, the first question, well, it is quite easy to control results. How long a person has been connected is very easy. When I said before that we're not organized, that we're not used to organizing work by task, bosses are not used to assign tasks to their people and to check the results. And the people are not used to get organized remotely. There are some tools, some IT tools helping us to do that. The most difficult part for us is to develop engineering software. We need, I don't know, to design a helicopter or a plane with integrated systems. Now, that will be difficult. So the problem is not to understand whether people are working or not, but the problem is to understand how they can interact together, how they can cooperate, and to work together remotely. And that is possible only if we assign them clear tasks. As for the second question, what is positive here is that the public administration and companies will have to review their processes, and will have to be able to provide remote services rather than asking people to be present or to go to the town hall for an identity card or a passport. Now, this is quite complex for small municipalities, for example, because they will need a strong support. Leonardo, for example, is working with ANCI in order to provide services to small municipalities to enable them standard platforms which are cyber secure, and that can meet citizens' needs and that are user-friendly for them. To conclude, as somebody was saying before, that will significantly change the working context. So let's think about bars or restaurants, for example, that in many cities are closing down just because they lived off the workers going there for lunch. And today, basically, they have no customers. So we need to think about the change of the overall society, which is going to be radical, and we will have to understand how to smooth this change. Yes, revolutions should be changed, that's clear, and here politics should be involved, which shouldn't create problems, but rather should understand that there must be a universal project involving us all. Otherwise, if anyone is working on its own, some are doing bad, some are doing good, then everything will be useless. I totally agree. Looking at what happened abroad, I think that we haven't done our best in this phase. Or rather, we have done our best, and we should be more optimistic. We don't always have to think that other people have to do something. We also have to do something ourselves. We are a part of the community. I tend to think that it's not the others making mistakes. Yeah, with coronavirus, we've seen countries which we have always seen as models, like the United States, the United Kingdom, and France, which have had more problems than us. As for the first question, it will be interesting to hear what Landini will say over the next few days, Landini from the trade unions, because here there's a shift from results So we will need to talk with the worker representatives in order to say what is important, the result and not the effort. And this is particularly interesting. As for the second question, and I will give you a practical example, like the girl working as a waitress in the restaurant where I used to go for lunch in Milan is now not working, and is on a redundancy fund. So she came to us, and we told her that she would find a job elsewhere. Now she has registered in a course, and she is probably going to change her job. Probably for some years, restaurants and bars in Milan will have some problem. So she's now attending this course to become a social worker. So that is a positive example. So we need to look at people's attitudes, their training, in order to see how they can be retrained. Yes, we need to reinvent ourselves. And we Italians are very good at reinventing ourselves. Travaglia, what do you think? Yes, quite so. Yes, because we are flexible, because we are creative, and because we are able to react, which also surprises ourselves. As for the first question, everyone has given an answer. We must have clear objectives, clear goals that need to be shared so that results can be measured. And the clear objectives, unfortunately, is something that we risk losing in smart working. So we need to make an effort, managers need to make an effort in order to be really able to better communicate goals. As for the second question, I think this is a great opportunity to simplify things, as in, In the corporate culture, we've seen that we tend to simplify things and to be much faster than before. Simplify because there was not time, and because we just had to concentrate on the essential. So, talking about the public administration, that could be a very good opportunity to foster digitization and to reduce red tape, to focus on the essential. Citizens want results with the least possible effort. And this is the result that this radical change should lead to. Let's take the positive sides of this enormous disruption which has affected us all. While at the same time we need to continue to have a balance. We need to strike a balance between the two sides. The extremes are always dangerous. We need to manage people in person, working in the office, and at home at the same time. If we manage to do so, then we will have transformed a tragedy into something positive. I think that we Italians have the ability to do so. An apple? As for the first question, we don't need to control people. We need to assign tasks very clearly. This is the way to go. At the same time, we need to disseminate a culture of personal and team leadership, and we need teamwork. Everyone has to work together for the same goal. That will enable people to be more productive for the common good and for a common goal. And that will give us the possibility also to promote leadership in every person. And the management will play a fundamental role in creating this common responsibility, common culture of responsibility. As for the second question, as for digital services provided to citizens by the state, they can improve on condition that investments are made on that. These services can be optimized only with digitization strategies and with significant investments. I believe that investing on consumers and on digital integration and relations, digital relations with users is going to be the future in order to then launch the economic recovery and to improve relations between the state and citizens. Thank you very much. The debate has been very interesting, although a bit longer than expected. I thank you very much to all the speakers: Giancarlo Blangiardo, President of ISTAT; Marco Ceresa, CEO of Randstad Italy; Alessandro Profumo, CEO of Leonardo; Marco Travaglia, President and CEO of Nestlè Italy; and Marco Anapel, President and CEO of Philip Morris Italy. Now, thank you very much, and we'll see you at the next events of the meeting. Thank you very much to you all.
Benvenuti nell'era del post digitale, dove like, tweet, share sono comuni azioni della nostra vita quotidiana. Ci svegliamo, ci loghiamo e iniziamo la giornata. È vero, la tecnologia ci ha semplificato la vita, ma forse l'ha resa un po' meno intima, anche se non deve essere per forza così. Noi di Randstad, infatti, crediamo nelle connessioni reali, quelle che vanno oltre i dati e gli algoritmi, quelle che si basano su empatia, intuizione, istinto. Per questo, all'innovazione tecnologica, uniamo sempre la passione dei nostri professionisti. Per creare una connessione che sia umana, come quella che c'è tra due persone che parlano davanti a un caffè. Per andare al di là di un curriculum o di un annuncio di lavoro. Per comprendere il cuore e l'anima di un'azienda. Per spingere i nostri candidati e i nostri clienti ad andare sempre oltre. Human Forward. E questo è il progresso che ci porterà a realizzare tutto il nostro potenziale. Perché non è un lavoro a definire chi siamo, ma è ciò che siamo a definire il lavoro che facciamo. Randstad, Human Forward.
Days of hunger, won't you buy them for me?
Benvenuti nell'era del post digitale, dove like, tweet, share sono comuni azioni della nostra vita quotidiana. Ci svegliamo, ci loghiamo e iniziamo la giornata. È vero, la tecnologia ci ha semplificato la vita, ma forse l'ha resa un po' meno intima, anche se non deve essere per forza così. Noi di Randstad, infatti, crediamo nelle connessioni reali, quelle che vanno oltre i dati e gli algoritmi, quelle che si basano su empatia, intuizione, istinto. Per questo, all'innovazione tecnologica, uniamo sempre la passione dei nostri professionisti. Per creare una connessione che sia umana, come quella che c'è tra due persone che parlano davanti a un caffè. Per andare al di là di un curriculum o di un annuncio di lavoro. Per comprendere il cuore e l'anima di un'azienda. Per spingere i nostri candidati e i nostri clienti ad andare sempre oltre. Human Forward. E questo è il progresso che ci porterà a realizzare tutto il nostro potenziale. Perché non è un lavoro a definire chi siamo, ma è ciò che siamo a definire il lavoro che facciamo. Randstad, Human Forward.